Okay, let's get back to the little Rhonda situation.
Should be taught about the harsh conditions slaves endured, but also about how slaves developed skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit.
They're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life.
That comment drew a swift rebuke from fellow Republican presidential candidate Will Hurd, who tweeted, "Slavery wasn't a jobs program that taught beneficial skills. It was literally dehumanizing." The nation's first Black and Asian American vice president traveled to Florida Friday to condemn the new standards in person.
I am deeply concerned. Because let's be clear, I do believe this is not only about the state of Florida. There is a national agenda afoot.
Gutfeld also defended it. Nice.
It's weird. It's like the media wants you to believe the Osmond brothers came up with a curriculum, that it was all evil white people. It's actually, that's why they keep saying Floridians.
This statement from two of the people who work at Florida's new education standards on slavery. In it, they give several names of people who exemplify slaves, who learned skills they applied to later in life. Let's go through the supposed truth on this list one by one. The first is Ned Cobb, who was listed as a blacksmith. Ned Cobb was a tenant farmer and activist who was born in 1885, 20 years after the emancipation of slaves. The second is Henry Blair, also listed as a blacksmith. There's no evidence Henry Blair was ever enslaved, and the fact that he could register patents is evidence he was not, in fact, ever enslaved. The third name is Lewis Latimer, who also listed as a blacksmith. Lewis's parents escaped slavery, obtained their freedom in Massachusetts, and eventually Lewis was born a free man in free Massachusetts. The fourth name is John Henry, also listed as a blacksmith. Detailed facts about real John Henry are disputed. His status is principally a folk hero. Fifth name is James Fortin, listed as a shoemaker. He was a free-born African-American sailmaker, not shoemaker. The sixth name is Paul Cuffey, listed as a shoemaker. Paul was also born free, was a whaler. The seventh name is Betty Washington Lewis, listed as a shoemaker. Betty was the free white sister of George Washington, the first president of the United States, and a slave owner. The eighth name is Jupiter Hammond, listed as a fishing and shipping industry worker. Jupiter is the first name on the list so far who was actually a slave all his life and was a writer and a poet. If he worked in that industry, it was in that capacity. The ninth is John Chavis, listed as a fishing and shipping industry worker. He was free from birth, never enslaved, and worked as a minister and teacher. The 10th name is William Whipper. Not only are they trying to create a narrative that, like, there were positive aspects to slavery, which is already, like, objectively insane, they also did it by lying, because it's ridiculous from the jump. And it's also not correct. It's incorrect information. It is ahistoric to already look for some kind of positive benefits to slavery, but then to do it in this way, where you also just made up, falsely attributed to free black men the status of slavery, and just to make this false narrative stick is insane. Flat out revisionism is what's going on here. Exactly right, chatter. And I don't know what else to say about it other than these people are gross. They're disgusting. They're nasty freaks. This whole list is ridiculous, but this one's breaking me. The 13th name, James Thomas, listed as a tailor. This is a little bit more complicated. James was born a slave and had his freedom bought by his mother at age 6, but Tennessee law stipulated he would remain legally a slave until he left the state. He worked as an apprentice at a barbershop owned by another slave and eventually opened his own barbershop. He worked as a barber, eventually gained his real freedom, and then in his later years, he was a real estate investor. He was not a tailor. The 12th name was Elizabeth Keckley, listed as a seamstress. Elizabeth was indeed a slave and learned how to be a seamstress while a slave, but it was her enslaved mother who taught her how to do that while her slavers raped her. You know, remember, it is objectively a ridiculous notion and ridiculous assertion, okay, to say this anyway. There is, in fact, abundant evidence in their life stories, in fact, that new skills were much more readily acquired as they got their freedom. How you, Alex Lanfran, or any of your fellow ghouls look at yourself in the mirror when you wake up in the morning, I don't know. It's justifying slavery, but one step removed so you don't get immediately shit on. Yeah, it's trying to do historical revisionism, not on direct terms that, like, and not by saying, like, slavery was good, actually, you don't understand, but by masking it. And the reason why they do this is because they can't just say it outright, because nobody wants to be called a racist, okay? This is something that people fail to recognize, which is why I was talking about the DeSantis campaign, which it perfectly dovetails into. I think DeSantis' real problem isn't that just he's racist. It's that his campaign is racist in the same way that a really annoying teenager is. Your average xenophobic suburbanite dad looks at a Sun and Rad Wojak ad like his son crashed his car. A lot of people are arguing that your average 56-year-old Trump supporter isn't as racist as your average DeSantis supporting Zoomer. Arguably true, but that's not the point. Putting weird blood and soil shit in your ad smells. It's deeply uncool to the exact people you want to impress. That's the precise point that a lot of people in the DeSantis campaign are either purposely just throwing aside or forgetting because they're too brain broken by being on 4chan. And being on these like super groped up Discord circles. Every racist person will spend an incredible amount of time denying that they're racist. And there are certain things that you do that make every racist person even understand that you're a gross racist. And esoteric Nazi relics being put in your campaign ad is precisely that. You're not just a racist at that point. You're like a gross, nerdy racist. You're a nerd for racism. The worst kind of racist. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' administration rejects the African-American AP course. The State Department of Education claims it does not comply with Florida law. It's like if the Republicans started campaigning on abortion policies by saying, I want women to fucking suffer. You're not going to say that because no matter how misogynistic people are, they still want to be sold that their idea is not rooted within harm to others, but instead for a positive note. That's why they say they're pro-life. They don't say that they're pro-forcibly carrying pregnancy is the term. They say they're pro-life. They care about the baby's life. It's very odd when you have a situation like this where you just openly forget what Americans look like. Even the most Nazi American will literally still cringe at Nazi rhetoric. Americans are anti-Nazi. That's the one honorable war we fought and won, remember? That's why you're supposed to say the Democrats are the real Nazis. That's why you say the Democrats are the real racists. That's why you say the Democrats are the Klan, the KKK Radic Party. I don't know how you get to a point where your campaign is so dominated by the most idiotic groypers that you let them run amok and you have campaign flubs like this, or no one is advising you not to go the distance on this like anti-woke legislation. So much so that it has it gets to a point where, you know, even regular old racist Americans turn around and say, okay, that's a bridge too far.